Paper starting off with Vanguard, and Vanguard is leading with PDP. Atiku holds rally in Yola. Wike's allies meet in P-Harcourt. The writer says Odili's birthday overshadowed anticipated meeting. I have not resigned, no plans to do so, says Ayu. Yola tipped to be Atiku's campaign DG. Giving Wike chairmanship slot will solve crisis. That's coming from Senator Okon. Wike won't leave PDP. He's a principled politician. That's coming from Daily Momodu. We can also see a photo story showing Atiku in Yola. Stories below, we have Fulani group disowns Miyetti Allah's statement on Obi. You can see that on page 4. Still on page 4, Blackout looms as electricity workers begin strike tomorrow. Picket TCN today. On page 6, gunmen invade Kogi market, kill one, abduct another, demands a 20 million naira ransom. On page 9, Victor Wife's family disowns remembrance program, alleges forgery of will. Stories above. We have on page 6, police custom officers clearing agents by Colorado tramadol from us. That's coming from drug peddlers. We have on page 19, election fever pressures the inflation rate to 16 years high. On page 20, the big interview. Millions of Nigerians taken out of poverty through works, housing, ministry. That's coming from Pashola. Also, Lu of Warri's first anniversary celebration. To get that, you have to stick to our website and also the Vanguard newspaper. You can take on the front page of the newspaper. Let's take a look at The Guardian. The Guardian is leading with 19.6% inflation. More people become poor. Expert warns. The writer says defies interest rate hike. Rattles analysts. Surge to 19.6%, highest since 2005. Figures reflection of more scary future. Okon, civil servants most hit. Purchasing power very weak. Suspend telecom beverage tax, says Wike. Reign in 19.7 trillion naira ways and means loans to federal. Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I am Precious Chukudi. We begin with the front pages of the paper, starting off with Vanguard, and Vanguard is leading with PDP. Atiku holds rally in Yola. Wike's allies meet in P-Harcourt. The writer says Odili's birthday overshadowed anticipated meeting. I have not resigned, no plans to do so, says Ayu. Yola tipped to be Atiku's campaign DG. Giving Wike chairmanship slot will solve crisis. That's coming from Senator Okon. Wike won't leave PDP. He's a principled politician. That's coming from Daily Momodu. We can also see a photo story showing Atiku in Yola. Stories below, we have Fulani group disowns Miyetti Allah's statement on Obi. You can see that on page 4. Still on page 4, Blackout looms as electricity workers begin strike tomorrow. Picket TCN today. On page 6, gunmen invade Kogi market, kill one, abduct another, demands a 20 million naira ransom. On page 9, Victor Wife's family disowns remembrance program, alleges forgery of will. Stories above. We have on page 6, police custom officers clearing agents by Colorado tramadol from us. That's coming from drug peddlers. We have on page 19, election fever pressures the inflation rate to 16 years high. On page 20, the big interview. Millions of Nigerians taken out of poverty through works, housing, ministry. That's coming from Pashola. Also, Lu of Warri's first anniversary celebration. To get that, you have to stick to our website and also the Vanguard newspaper. And that's how we can take on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. Let's take a look at The Guardian. The Guardian is leading with 19.6% inflation. More people become poor. Expert warns. The writer says defies interest rate hike. Rattles analysts. Surge to 19.6%, highest since 2005. Figures reflection of more scary future. Okon, civil servants most hit. Purchasing power very weak. Suspend telecom beverage tax, says Wike. Reign in 19.7 trillion naira ways and means loans to federal government. Galloping inflation recipe for recession. Higher unemployment. Economics insists. Stories below, we have Niger Delta leader Ajube alleges neglect of Ondo mandate areas by NDDC. On page 4, Ruto wins Kenyan presidential election. Buhari applauds exercise. A Catholic group rejects Along's apology, tells governor to resign. Fulani elite disown Miyetti Allah's statement on Obi. Page 4, Afenifere accuses Buhari's government of ceding Nigeria to terrorists. Lastly, on front page of the Guardian newspaper, PDP crisis, you can't decide for a presidential candidate, says McAfee. All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation is leading with Atiku, Wike, others. I have no plan to quit PDP chair now. I was elected for 4 years. Absence of Atiku's men stop peace party. Federal government not sincere about ending strike, says ASU. Union meets Education Minister August today. 9 stories above. We have 19.64% inflation rate, highest ever in 17 years, says NBS. Rate jumps by 1.82% in 1 month. World Bank ex LCCI chief worried. NCDC confirms 15 monkeypox cases. Electricity workers set to battle TCN. Ocean OSEC chairman alleges threat to life. Commercial activities pick up in Southeast. You can see that on page 5. That's what we can take on the front page of the Nation. Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with 19.6% inflation rate. Federal government warned against Aki's hunger. Sierra Leone's crisis. The writer says inflation hits a 17 years all-time high. Nigerians to pay more for consumables. Nigeria going Zimbabwean way. Nobody's doing anything. That's coming from DG NAC. Politicians concerned about 2023 elections, not dying economy. That's coming from experts in CSO. Amotekun train Ondo recruits vow to tackle criminals. You can see a further story on that. Pages 4 and 5. Man dies in motel after meeting online lover. Still on pages 4 and 5. Police kill 5 kidnappers. Abducted Redeemer's student escapes. And killing of innocent Nigerians. Afenifere tells Buhari. You can see that on page 29. Stories above. Power intervention funds jump to 2.9 trillion naira. Lassa fever, 165 killed. Awareness call rises. You can see that on page 5. Federal government ASU meets today. Strike enters 183 days. Wow. Running mate Wike accuses Rivers elders of gang up. You can see that on page 18. Lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Fuel subsidy hits 1.593 trillion naira. Refineries rehabilitation gobs of 54 billion naira. And that's all we can take on the front pages of the papers. Join us after the break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We're just joining us today in the news of Angle Life. I am Precious Chukudi, and joining me to talk about the front pages of the papers this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. He's the publisher of Liquidity Today and Lekki Today. Good morning, sir. Good to have you join me this morning.
Good morning to all our viewers.
All right, so let's move into the papers, and we're still talking about Atiku Wike's feud. Like, what's your take on the situation of things? It's been back and forth, of late now, with Wike's camp asking for some demands and Atiku's camp, still quiet, and things going back and forth in the PDP camp. What do you think about it?
Well, Wike lost out on both the presidential ticket and the vice presidential slot, and that has kind of been a bit of a slur for him. And he looks at the kind of influence he wields within the party and the kind of financial support he's been giving the party over the years, and he thinks he should have been treated a bit better than that. And so this is the groundswell of the agitation from Wike camp, is that despite the pivotal role they play within the PDP, they've essentially been shut out of the two key positions in terms of the upcoming elections. So, without a doubt, they're not happy about that. And my understanding is that they are now angling for chairmanship of the party. That, well, if they couldn't get the presidential slot and they couldn't get the vice presidential slot, he at least should be offered the chairmanship of the party. But even before getting to that point, one major point of contention from him is that the existing chairman must resign his position because it's against the party ethos for both the presidential candidate and the chairman of the party to come from the same zone, which is they're both from the north. But a lot of watchers believe that agitation is just so that Wike himself, that he doesn't particularly care really in terms of the principle. He doesn't really care that both are from the same zone, that he's making that agitation to get the existing president to resign, and then he has an opportunity to become chairman of the party. If Wike is not placated some kind of way, there is a real and clear present danger that he may decide to pack his bags and go elsewhere. The PDP does not want that to happen, clearly.
All right, so you made mention of the fact that, some people are also mentioning the fact that, he should be compensated with the chairmanship position of the party. What do you think about that? Do you think that would solve the crisis going on in the party?
Well, I think more than anything else, the party has to just show Wike that they appreciate him, that they appreciate his efforts, they appreciate his funding, they appreciate the visibility he's given to the party over the years. Because, truth be told, PDP as an opposition party has not really done that much. They've not been very effective, whether at the National Assembly or in the different state houses. They've not really been vocal as an opposition party, and Wike is the one who has kept PDP in the limelight over the last 7 years. So without a doubt, one has to doff one's hat to his efforts of keeping the PDP relevant, and I don't think he should just be allowed to go off into the night without his capabilities being utilized for the good of the party in the future. What are those capabilities? Like I said, he has a very strong following within the PDP. Within the South, he's highly regarded. He's also had a war chest that he has made available at PDP's disposal. So he is a force to be reckoned with within the PDP, and I think it's to their own peril if they don't find a way to placate him. I understand some of the things on the table are that he will get to a point, perhaps the SSG or the chief of staff and certain ministers, he will get to put people forward if PDP wins the presidential contest. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you've got to keep your people, your key people within any organization. You've got to let them know their efforts are appreciated. You've got to keep them within the loop, because it looks like the Atiku camp is going off on its own tangents without involving Wike and some of the other elders of the party in some of the decisions they are taking and the direction that they want the presidential campaign to go. Well, you don't do that, because a tree does not make a forest. Atiku and Okoa on their own do not make the PDP. For the PDP to have the kind of national appeal that it needs to have to win the presidential election, it's got to carry players along. It's got to carry key players along and utilize their capabilities, their networks, their strengths, the goodwill they've generated in various parts of the country.
All right, there are reports that there are some persons who are, within and outside, the party that are trying to avoid a reconciliation effort between the Atiku camp and also the Wike camp. What do you think that these people tend to gain, if they stop reconciliation processes between these camps?
There's always vested interest in every engagement, and you will find those who are Atiku supporters who don't like Wike and who don't want him to have a say, perhaps because if Wike has a strong say, they might be shut out. Likewise, there are some people in Wike's camp who are not interested in working with the Atiku people because they know that they may not get anything out of it. So politics is a game of interest. We hear that all the time. Politics is an engagement of interests, and as a result, people will always skew to the side that works towards their own interests. So I'm not surprised to hear that there are some people who are not interested in any reconciliation efforts. But like I said before, that would be to PDP's peril if they don't reconcile these two juggernauts, because both of them are key to the success of the party at the polls. And I don't think any selfish agenda or any individual aspiration or consideration should take precedence over the overall well-being of party. And I think that to have a healthy, vibrant PDP, both the Atiku and the Wike camps need to reconcile their differences. Whoever is able to bring them together, make them bury the hatchet, find a middle ground for all their grievances, without a doubt. Like I said, Atiku has a legitimate grievance. Wike has legitimate grounds to feel disgruntled and aggrieved. So they should try to find out what his concerns are. He's never bitten his tongue about expressing his concerns. And so they should find out how to address those concerns, have a meeting of the minds, compromise with him to some extent for the overall good of the party and for the progress of the campaign towards the presidential election next year.
All right, the ABC party has picked its own campaign council, but the PDP is yet to, as a result of this crisis. Now, some persons are saying that, Atiku should go ahead and pick who his campaign team would be. And some other people are also saying that if he goes ahead to do that, this might just be the end of the party. What do you think about it?
Well, he has to be very careful in his choice of who runs his campaign. Apart from even just the competence and the ability, there's also considerations that he has to weigh. There's issues, of course, of ethnicity, religion, which all play a factor. What we're hearing now is that the PDP is trying to offer the DG of the Atiku campaign to the Southwest, kind of as a SOP to the Southwest to say, okay, you guys have this, so you don't feel shut out of the whole process, and so that you can also campaign for us and rally around and bring the Southwest into the fold. Because APC seems to be a bit stronger in the Southwest, so PDP is looking for ways that it can attract a greater followership in the Southwest, because the Southwest does have a key number of votes to give to whoever their preferred candidate is. So the PDP is posturing to see how it will look if they offer the DG of the campaign, of Atiku campaign to the Southwest. But the Southwest is looking at it and saying, well, the DG, is an appointed position. Once the election is over, that DG is gone. He has no necessarily, he's not necessarily going to be involved in the upcoming administration if the PDP wins. So the Southwest is saying, no, we're going to hold out for something more important. We want a better role. We want a more inclusive, involved role in the upcoming government. We want you to commit to give us something more tangible than DG of the campaign committee. So these are further rumblings that could, yes, have the potential to tear the party apart. And that's why there's always great considerations of trying to balance various posts within the campaign, within the administration, to make sure that all the regions are carried along. Because remember, to win the presidential election, you need to cover 2/3 of the Nigerian states. You need to have, I think, 25% of the vote in 2/3 of Nigerian states, which is 24 states. So if you're only popular in the north, you can't win a presidential election. If you're only popular in the south, you can't win a presidential election. By the time you count 24 states, you know that you have to cherry pick some from each of the 6 geopolitical zones. And so the Southwest cannot afford to be ignored, and that's why there is on-the-ground rumblings at this moment that to give greater consideration to the Southwest in terms of positions to be offered in terms of Atiku presidency.
All right, do you see Governor Wike leaving the party amidst this crisis, just in case if some of his demands are not met? Do you see him leaving the party?
From all indications, he seems to be, I've heard him speak many times, and he says he's a dyed-in-the-wool PDP man. He's a party man, he's a party loyalist. He's never been in any other party, and he won't go to any other party. And there was also somebody on a morning TV show yesterday, a PDP stalwart, who also said the same thing, that Wike is too principled and too party man to think about defecting and going anywhere else. Well, I suppose it will depend on just how badly or aggrieved he feels, because at the end of the day, political parties in Nigeria exist strictly for the advancement of the individual politician. They are just vehicles for advancement to political office electorally or through appointment or whatever the case may be. And if that party is not giving you that platform for advancement to position and authority, then that party is useless to you. So I would never in Nigeria at this point say that any politician cannot defect. But because in other climes that have more mature democracies, their party affiliation and party membership is based on subscribing to the ideology of particular political parties. Well, our parties don't necessarily have well-defined ideologies just yet. So they serve simply as vehicles or platforms for advancement of political interest. And if a party is failing to do that, you will go to greener pastures to where you think your political ambition can actually find fertile ground. So I wouldn't put it past, but I would say it's unlikely from what we see. I don't think that PDP will allow things to degenerate to the point of allowing Wike to go, especially after they lost Peter Obi as well. Remember, it was by denying Obi the opportunity to even contest for the vice presidential ticket that he defected from the party and went to Labour. And look at all the destabilization that his campaign is now giving to the PDP and the APC. So I don't think they will make the mistake and allow Wike to go. But that's not to say if they don't find a way to satisfy him, he may not begin to reach out to other parties who we think might appreciate him better.
All right, let's move ahead and talk about this one now. A Fulani group has distanced itself from one Hassan Salah, who seems to be speaking on behalf of Miyetti Allah, who claimed to be speaking on behalf of the Fulani nation as well, that they would not support the candidature of Peter Obi. What's your take on that one?
First thing is that Miyetti Allah does not speak for the entire Fulani clan. They do not speak for the entire Nigeria. So if they are issuing a statement, they can just be talking about they themselves and their members, the cow herders that they speak for. They can't say they are speaking for the entire Fulani ethnicity. So that statement in and of itself, of course, has caused some furor because there are other northern groups that are disowning and disavowing and distancing themselves from that statement that is bigoted, it is divisive, it is ethnically repugnant, and that the basis Miyetti Allah is putting forward is spurious. That they're saying when Peter Obi was governor in Anambra, he hated Northerners, he kicked them all out of Anambra, he destroyed their businesses, he didn't allow them to thrive. And other groups have said this is not true. That there is, apart from Anambra, there is no community in southern Nigeria that has not been hospitable to Northerners and allowed them to do their business and to live and settle. And Anambra was never any different. But that even if it was, even if Peter Obi didn't do the right thing, it's not the place of Miyetti Allah to call him out on that on behalf of the entire Fulani tribe. And so I think Miyetti Allah, even if they have the right to freedom of expression and freedom of speech and all that, but I think they should have been more guarded. And even if they wanted to say something to that effect, they should have said speaking for them and their members, not for the entire northern region, because that statement has the ingredients for divisiveness, the ingredients for discrimination, the ingredients for hatred. It's sowing the seeds of discord among Northerners and their southeastern compatriots and fellow citizens. And at this time, as divided as Nigeria is, we don't need anybody trying to divide us further. How do you think Fulanis or Northerners who heard that statement yesterday, who don't know any better, who heard it and believe it, could very well go and start victimizing Southeasterners in the north, saying, well, your guy kicked us out when he was in power and things like that, which may not necessarily be true. So I want to caution groups like Miyetti Allah and every other interest group to be guarded in their statements, especially at a very sensitive time like this where we're preparing for elections and there's also a lot of divisiveness, division in the country. We're divided along political, religious, ethnic lines, and the ground is very fertile for destabilization. It's very easy for any careless statement to cause a conflagration, to basically explode a very tender situation. We're in an atmosphere like an unexploded bomb right now, and it just takes one hot-headed idiot to light the fuse. And careless statements like that, like that which Miyetti Allah made, can do that. So let's caution ourselves and be careful with our rhetoric, knowing that yes, this political season we have freedom of expression. We can say whatever we want, either in support. Because what Miyetti Allah was really trying to do was political. It was a political statement that was meant to indicate support for a particular candidate and to show disdain for a different candidate. So they were being political, despite the fact that there is social, cultural, professional association of professional cattle herders. So what's their place in making political statements that have the potential to divide us even further? So let's be cautious.
All right, let's move ahead and talk about this one. Now, organized labor has directed workers in the power sector to down tools and commence an indefinite strike over pending labor issues with the Transmission Company of Nigeria. Now, some of their grievances are, perceived stigmatization of staff from the Office of the Head of Service, refusal of the market operators to fund the payment of entitlement of the defunct Power Holding Company of Nigeria. Now, what's your take on this situation, Han? How do you think that this can actually be dealt with?
As if in the situation we're in now, we need any further disruption to our daily lives that's already suffering. And now with this potential strike, one way or another, it will further affect our epileptic power supply. As if we don't have enough problems already, we don't need any more. But the power sector workers, the TCM people, are simply saying that the government has not kept its word, and that the entitlements of their members from back in the PHCN days have not been paid. And you look around, and when you look at things like the ASU strike, the resident doctors are talking about going back on strike again after they called it off a year ago. Now TCN is about strike. See, when you have wholesale strikes throughout various sectors of the working class people who hold the country together in the various sectors. When you see strikes occurring willy-nilly, it essentially means that government is disdaining the very labor movement that keeps the country running. If you have an isolated strike here or there, fine. But by the time you see many different strikes, many different people threatened, ASU strike is 6 months now. And now this wants to happen beginning tomorrow. And you begin to ask yourself, what is it that is precipitating so many different people to take down tools and say they need to negotiate for better terms and conditions? Is it that we have an insensitive government? Is it that government is not sensitive to the plight of Nigerian workers? Or is it simply that the country is broke and cannot afford to meet what it would take to keep workers docile and happy? I know I was reading a report yesterday that said that in the first quarter of 2022, our debt service actually got all of the revenue we had, and there was nothing left over to spend. So part of the problem could be that government just doesn't have the money to meet the demands of these different workers. And I know that somebody said recently that government cannot afford to pay what ASU is demanding in the trillions. Government cannot afford to pay it. So it might also be an issue that they just can't afford to meet the emoluments and the gratuities of the previous PHCN workers. One thing that matters most is that irrespective of what the cause is average Nigerians that suffer. ASU strike is Nigerian children that are at home. If power goes off tomorrow because TCN goes on strike, it's Nigerians, everyday common Nigerians who will suffer. As it is, the cost of petrol, the cost of diesel, the cost of generating alternate power is prohibitively expensive. So if we don't have power from the grid, it puts a bigger pinch on our day-to-day existence. So I think it's a matter of still trying to negotiate further, meet each other halfway. Perhaps instead of lump sum payments, you can talk about installment. I think the big problem is that government is not trusted to keep its word. Even if government doesn't have all the money to pay at one time, if government made a promise to pay over a period, or made a promise to review issues of salaries, promotions, all the things that are causing workers to be aggrieved. If government were to make a promise and keep its promise, this seems to be the problem, is that when a strike occurs, government makes a promise, people go back to work, then government doesn't keep its promise. So I think most of this is coming from a lack of trust and a lot of suspicion.
All right, let's take Mr. and Mrs. before we go. And Mrs. is speaking. She says, dear, can I have the crocodile skin handbag and shoes? I also want the 24-karat gold necklaces and earrings I told you about. And Mr. Reply says, go ahead. Take anything you want. From the day I got married, I knew somebody has to be a workaholic and the other has to be a shopaholic.
Well, yeah, the conventional wisdom is that the money is for man to go and make it and for woman to spend it. So it's all good. Let Mrs. continue buying her necklaces, and Mr. has to be a workaholic to continue to earn the money to keep it happy. That's the way the world goes. We do the sweating, the women do the spending.
I mean, all right. Thank you so much, Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher of Liquid today, Lekki today, and Ikeja. Thank you for sharing your thought with us this morning. Also, remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, also YouTube. Our WhatsApp number is displayed on your screen. To find out more, you can go to our website, www.vanguardnjr.com. I am Precious Chukudi, and thank you.